Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Frenay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Frenay.
Well, hello again. It's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. Welcome back. And this is John Frenay, and
Tim
across
Hamilton.
the table is Tim Hamilton. Say hi, Tim.
Hi, Tim.
And, God, I want to just say thank you to everybody that downloaded this thing last week. Last week was our first real podcast.
Yeah, it was
the first real episode.
Knew what we were doing. Actually, all these buttons make sense. We have all this audio equipment we got, and just the buttons are daunting. So, yeah, we're getting it now.
So, yeah, no, we had, probably like 500 or 600 downloads. I haven't checked in a while, but and subscribing there. You can find us on iTunes, the Maryland Crabs Podcast.com. Actually, the Maryland Crabs is there. You can find us on Facebook in two places with a group as well as a page as the Maryland Crabs.
And the group's picking up steam. The reason that we like the group is because you can post, instead of just posting to the page, you can start conversations. And we had our first little bits of feedback. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
It didn't sting and didn't hurt at all. Just
Nope.
Not
on Twitter, you want to look for us at
not at all.
MD Crabs Podcast.
You can keep the criticism going there too, right? Facebook people?
Wherever, pretty much everywhere. But thank you guys for listening. Thank you for downloading. Please subscribe. Give us a rating on iTunes if you're over there.
Yeah, that'd be great. For everyone who did that, we really do appreciate that. That was
and,
a lot of...
share it. Let your friends know about the podcast. I think we may be onto something here. And we had a really interesting episode last week, and we started to talk a little bit about security, safety in the city, surrounding public housing and everything else. And
a lot's happened since we've done that too.
Yeah, well, we couldn't cover it all in just an hour. So we decided we needed to go out into the field, if you will, and get a different opinion. Because as Tim has said, these two middle-aged white guys sitting around a kitchen table is not the most.
No, I mean, we have our opinions of exactly what's going on, but we don't have the perspective to. All we're getting is pretty much what we're getting out of the paper, and we're not really seeing exactly what the impact is on ground level. So we had some great input into that this week.
So we wanted to do that. So what we did is we contacted a community activist, a regular at the Annapolis City Council meetings, Robert Eades, who is an independent taxi cab driver. He owns his own business. He is a lifelong resident of Annapolis. He's a product of public housing. He knows the ins and outs. He knows where the bodies are buried.
And he's very vocal about it, too.
Is not apologetic, not vocal, very passionate. And we learned quite a lot about Robert. It's unfortunate that the city gives him 3 minutes. Because
just 3. Well, he always goes over that. I mean, that's...
Yeah, he does. He tells them to shut up and sit down and listen to him for another 5 minutes. But he's a great guy. He sat down there. He spoke with us, very candid, laid out his opinions. He threw out some accusations. He threw out some innuendo. But this is the ground. This is on the ground. This is boots on the ground.
And this is all things that he's actually said. This is typical Robert, who's a great guy. I just wanted this interview was not what I thought it was going to be honest with you, because first of all, it was our first remote. We'd never gone out in the field before.
Right, so we went to the Annapolis Library on West Street and we watched a 3D printing, and then we sat in their conference room and talked to Robert.
Yeah, he was great. And like I said, I thought it was going to be more fiery, because whenever I see Robert, he is fiery, and I found him to be very thoughtful and actually really smart. Not that I didn't think he was, but he had some great insight. I thought that to what's going on, some great history behind that. Very passionate guy, and you can hear that because we learned as he jabbed his finger into the table to make every point that rumbled through the recorder, as we found out while editing it.
Right. So if you can count how many thumps there were, we'll give you a gift card to Union Jacks.
Exactly. But it was a great interview, and we're going to have him back definitely, and we're going to be taking a closer look at from a different perspective. But right now, let's listen to Robert Eades talk about crime in public housing in Annapolis.
Let's do it. Robert, man, thanks for showing up and coming out to talk to us. How are you today?
You're just fine,
Well, I want to say we've actually met before. And when John came up, he goes, "Have you met him before?" I said, "I'm going to tell you the story." So it was a couple years ago, 3 years ago. I'm a very aggressive driver. and a bit too much of an aggressive driver. So we were coming into Grohl's one day, and I had to go pick something up, and I was on the phone, which is what you should be doing when you're driving. And this cab shoots in front of me, take a left, and I lean on the horn because that's just what I do. And it was actually my fault. So I pull into Grohl's, and I'm texting John. I said, I think that was Robert Eades, because we know you from council. And he goes, did you meet him? I said, he just shot across. So I walk into Grohl's, and then who's there but Robert? And he comes, he slaps me on the back. He goes, oh, sorry, my man, didn't even see you. And that to me is the perfect Robert Eades moment. It's something that was confrontational, yet you're lovable. And that's why we have you here, because we're big fans. We watch you on the city council meetings, and in our mind, we think you're probably the only true advocate for those who live in public housing. I mean, I think you have these elected officials who say that they're gonna improve their lot. You have community activists, and I think we all know who they are. But you're the only one that we see who's actually goes up and you go toe to toe with the mayor. Which I got to be honest with you, I love watching. It makes for great TV.
The thing too is, I mean, Kenny Kirby. I mean, he's elected mayor. I'm not sure how much he has done for the community that he's elected to serve. And you don't live in public housing, right?
Not anymore.
Right.
I did. I did.
Well, what's your backstory? Where how long are you a native in Annapolis?
I was born I was born in Baltimore, but my mother. I was born in Providence Hospital in Baltimore. My family's always lived in Annapolis. Actually, the first 10 years of my life, I lived on Annapolis Snake Road, right next to the Quiet Waters Farm.
Yeah.
All of my grandmother's uncles and aunts and all that whole stretch of land was theirs at one time.
And that's like where that little graveyard is, right?
Yeah. From the Quiet Waters Inn straight on up to the graveyard was my grandmother's, either her uncles, her aunts, or somebody in that Johnson family. And so the first 10 years of my life, I grew up there. On 1966 Christmas present my mother gave us as we moved from down there to in town on Pleasant Street to 72 Pleasant Street, where we actually had running water. I didn't have to go haul water anymore. And
Seriously, you had to. I mean, that's the way it was. You didn't have water.
No, first 10 years of my life, we had no running water.
So this is in the 60s.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And 1966 was the first time I lived in a house with running water. When I say lived in, I mean full time. My grandmother also lived at 36 Pleasant Street. We would come sometime and spend the summers with her, but she had running water and all the up-to-date utilities. And so from 1966, I've been within the city of Annapolis. Annapolis Neck at that time was county. Mm-hmm. They have since then they have annexed it in. Mm-hmm. But it was county at that time.
And was the public housing in some?
No
public housing at all.
Public housing at that time was within the city limits: Oberg Court, College Creek Terrace, Annapolis Garden, Eastport Terrace, Harbor House, and Bloomsbury Square. Mm-hmm. But we didn't move into public housing. We moved into a house on Pleasant Street, which was my grandmother's brother's house, who he died and left to my grandmother. And then when around 74, we moved to Newtown 20. We were the second family in Newtown 20 to live there. And from there, my mother showed me how that public housing wasn't a place for you to go to live forever, but to use as a stepping stone.
Absolutely.
To make your next step up. And she brought a house down on in Cedar Park, down off of Bay Ridge Avenue. I'm trying to think. It's Bank Street. You turn in on Banks and you go.
Yes, yeah, I know exactly where it is.
Cedar Ridge. I said Cedar Park. That's the street.
Crossing the SPCA.
Cedar Ridge, yeah, down in that way. So stayed there for a while. And then when I got from Newtown 20, my mother gave me my walking papers. I turned 18 in Newtown 20.
My dad gave me them too.
And she gave me my walking papers. But then I was in a very serious car accident. Snapped my femur in half, broke my arm, broke my nose, broke my foot. And I was in the hospital for like 4.5 months. When I got out, my mother took me back in because I was sick. And left my mother's house again. And started my life of street hustling. Actually, I started my life of street hustling way before.
Well, tell us a little bit. What's public housing like at that time, and is it different than what it is now?
Oh, it's a whole lot different. At that time, public housing was a decent place to live in.
Sense of community.
Yeah, it was community. You had
Crime.
yeah, but the crime wasn't that bad because my generation, we were about crime, but we were also about respect of the neighborhood and respect of the people that lived in the neighborhood.
I had a neighbor in New Jersey that was in the mafia, and the same thing. It was.
So, there always going to be crime. There always going to be bad guys like I am who I sold reefer, sold a little bit of cocaine. But here was the difference. Somebody had hard times ready to get put out. When one of the drug dealers heard about it, it didn't happen. Might not have seen who sent the money, or might not know who paid the money. But we didn't allow people to get put out, or we didn't allow children to run around hungry. Sure, we was drug dealers, but we also know which mothers were taking care of their kids and which weren't, and which needed a little bit of help. So there were certain ladies in the neighborhood that we would go to and give money. They would in turn take their little bit off to feed their children and see that the next mothers down got their children fed.
Wow.
So that was how we carried. If somebody died and they didn't have insurance, the word just came to the drug dealers and we just put the money up. And what happened was they started taking out the programs out of the neighborhood. So when you started taking out the programs out of the neighborhood, now the guys like myself, the drug dealers or the bad guys or the guys who dropped out of school early, we hung here. The good kids, they hung here. The little kids always had somewhere to go away from everybody. The older guys, much older than ourselves, they didn't deal with us. Even though we were doing the same things, there was a certain amount of respect. You're a little kid, get the hell away from me. So you what? Drive my foot up your ass.
So there was an order to everything, and everyone understood what it was. So what do you think's changed between then and now?
Well, what has changed then, and that's what I'm about to tell you. Once you take and start the gentrification process, then you're taking away the programs. You got the younger guys who don't know anything about respect because everybody's growing up together. When it was separate, you knew your place. The good guys knew, well, hey, we're not going over on that end because that's where all the drug dealer guys hang at. So we're not going to hang in that area. We're going to be down by the Stanton School. We're going to be over by the big field. Most of us drug dealers in town, we hung down by the water. It was easier. All the drug people who wanted to buy drugs, they came down the bottom of Northwest Street, or at the bottom of Clay Street, there used to be a hill you could go down, and there was a big open space with a pier where the old men would go down and play checkers, and we would go down and hang out. Northwest Street goes down towards the water.
Right.
You go towards past the graveyard, down towards the water. We hung out down there, and we hung out at the bottom of, right where the Zastro Sims building. Mm-hmm. Well, in that field, there was go down the hill where the old men had cleaned it out for bringing their boats in, and it was a pier. And we would hang there and there. So anybody who wanted drugs, they came to those areas, which left the streets and everything clear.
So what you're saying is, so let's take Eastport, for example, and Harbor House. The gentrification, which you had the black neighborhoods in Eastport, which were kind of pushed out as housing prices went up, and it's become whiter. But then the public housing kind of shrinks, and you're talking about there's not that much room.
The public housing shrinks now. At its peak, public housing in the city of Annapolis was 1,004 units.
And
at its peak.
And now we're like 7 something.
Yeah.
790, I think it is now.
And about 2,000 residents, right?
Yeah.
Give or take.
But the thing about that whole thing is, we live in a city of 38,000 people, 1,104 units. How can you say that's too much public housing? I mean, now, and here's the trick they use. They would say per capita, Annapolis have more public housing than anyone, and everybody feeds on that. But what the deal is, per capita, we have more public housing communities. Because you got Eastport Terrace, Harbor House, Oldbury Court, Bloomsbury Square, Annapolis Garden, Bowman Court. They have more public housing communities, but you don't have more public housing per capita.
Right.
You actually have less
residents.
Yeah, So when they keep doing that, that's where the gentrification comes in, like the Clay Street area. It's waterfront property. Harbor House, Eastport Terrace, right at the Housing Authority's head office down there. Before you go there, you go down, it's a slot, it goes right to the water.
Right.
Now, I can't call names, but I was told by a good, reliable source, the housing that they build right next to Harbor House, the new big $1 million homes,
right.
You know what I'm talking about?
That used to be the motel.
No, this is back behind Harbor
Back
House.
used to
Madison
be
Avenue.
the bus company used to be back
I know where
there.
it is, yeah.
God, he was good to us in the city. Lonigan's bus company was over there. I was told by a good, reliable source that those people have been already told that they don't have to worry about Harbor House because the city's going to see to it that it gets knocked over.
Well, I think
Now, I see the mayor making his push, and it's all about redevelopment. And this is my personal opinion. I'm going on record. It's my personal opinion that because of the mayor's father is a lobbyist for developers, this is where the mayor's getting all this push to get these places developed between them, him, Trudy McFall, Dennis Conti. I will call those names because they were the ones who tried to get me, Dennis Conti, Trudy McFall, and Eric Brown, to be a spokesman for them to go into the black community and convince everybody that they should go into affordable housing, which is a trick because what's affordable to each one of us ain't affordable to the other one. Sure. So I fought against that. Trudy McFall wanted me to go down. She was a chairperson at the Housing Authority then. She gave me a list. She wanted me to go to all the people who were paying market rent at that time at the Housing Authority and convince them that they should go to Juliana Circle and get involved in the lease to purchase program, which once I looked at the program, in my opinion, it's a sucker program. So that was when Trudy and I first started falling out. Now,
I hear her name come up in a lot of meetings.
I have to go on record. She did help me become a homeowner, but that was only to be used by her. I was put out there, and she made me think she was doing something because they wanted me to be their spokesperson because I was well known in the community and had led a couple of good protesters against the housing community and housing authority. So she saw, and I didn't see it in the beginning, how she could use me. Because when I first applied for my house, they told me no, I wasn't adequate to get it. But once she saw my name, she told the lady Kathy Ebner to call me back, and they would work it out for me that I could get in there. So I was paying lease to purchase maybe a year before they even had the monies for the program.
So you were just you see it as that you were just a means to they wanted your voice within the community.
They used me to get into the community. I run a Boys and Girls Club, and I picked basically the bad kids. They filtered me money to do everything under the sun with these kids. Taking them all to D.C., to Smithsonian, picnics over at the Sandy Point all day, blacks and wax trips. I mean, any trip that I came up with, something I came up to do. At this point, I was working out at the Housing Authority. I had every bit of 52 kids signed up, with 25 showing up every Wednesday or Saturday, and in between the trips that we were doing. But soon as I didn't go along with their program, then all of a sudden the money started drying up and they didn't want to do. And they basically, we was at the Martin Luther King Awards dinner, and Governor Ehrlich was the keynote speaker that night. So when they called us up, I'm standing right behind the governor. So I'm whispering in his ear now. I'm like, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you. So he turns and says, well, wait till we get off the podium. So we get off the podium, and I tell him about how run down Old Court and College Creek Terrace is, and that I got this Boys and Girls Club, and I deal with basically the bad kids. And so he said, well, I'm going to come over and check it out and come to your meeting with your kids one day. So just didn't have cutting. So I kept making myself kind of like go downtown when he was going down the chicken roof to get his lunch, and I, Governor, you know. So finally, he makes.
Where I come from, we call that a restraining order.
Yeah. So finally, he says he calls me over. He's coming over. So he comes over to the Clay Street Rec with my kids, him and his wife. Spent every bit of hour and a half, 2 hours. I couldn't even get the newspaper to come over and view it. Governor comes to a community 2 blocks away from. Wow. So I walk Governor Ehrlich through, and I show him the condition that the Housing Authority is in, Oberry Court and College Creek Terrace. Well, College Creek Terrace wasn't in that bad a condition. It was the Oberry Court buildings. So he sends Victor Hoskins, who was then in charge of the state housing and whatever. So Victor Hoskins comes down. He sees the places, so he pledges $500,000 to bring Oberry Court and College Creek Terrace back up to code. Another $7 million to redo them.
So this is like 2007 ish.
Yeah, somewhere around there. At that table was me, Carl Snowden, Trudy McFall, Debbie Johnson, Eric Brown, Dennis Conti, the lady from Habitat. No, she wasn't there. She was in the other group. And there was a couple other people there at the meeting. And bottom line is, Trudy and Eric and Dennis wouldn't apply for the money. So I said to Trudy, what's going on? Why y'all not applying for the money to get, I know Victor Hoskins, he's just talking a lot of talk. Ain't nothing. I said, no. The governor sent him to us. I talked to the governor personally. The governor sent him and allowed me to set this meeting up and have him come there. So they wouldn't apply for the money. So that's when I started getting pissed, because I saw what they were doing now. They wanted to apply for this base place voucher, which means they would get the developers to come in to redo the properties. But the people, the tenants who would coming from the Housing Authority, most of these people were told at the point at the Housing Authority, if they moved out, that they would be able to come back. And we were led to think that it was still going to be a public housing project. Well, we found out it wasn't going to be at the last minute. It's going to be what they call a space voucher, which means HUD says to Public Housing Authority, okay, we get these people come in, they pay 33% of their income, which would still make them pay like if they was living in public housing. But the catch is the state puts the other rest of the money, so it becomes like they're getting paid.
So subsidized.
So they're getting paid market rent. So this is why they didn't want to go back and let the state put up their money with Victor, because they wouldn't be making any money. All monies were made because it would still remain the public housing. And all monies that turned over were going to the upkeep of the properties or paying whatever they do, along with the little bit of money that HUD was sending down. So at that point, I said, why would we do this? when we got the state already pledged to take care of this? No. So that's when I started falling out with them. I said, I see what this is all about. Y'all trying to feed your pockets. In return, you want to tear down College Creek Terrace, second oldest public housing built in the United States. And the foundation and structure of the building and everything was solid and strong. All which needed to be done was go in and gut it out and rehab it, which they didn't want to do. So we started having all of these disagreements, and then so they kind of like just eased me out of the picture. When they started having meetings, they stopped inviting me, they stopped me. And so came along, bring you fast forward up a little bit. It was supposed to be done in 3 phases. Phase 1 was on the right-hand side of Clay Street going over. Phase 2 was up on Oberry Street, up on towards your left-hand side, Oberry Court. Phase 3 was supposed to be what's done with College Creek Terrace. Have nothing against Habitat. Habitat is a wonderful program. But we never ever discussed giving away public housing property to Habitat
homes
for nothing. You got a housing authority that you're saying is suffering and need money. You get $1 million worth of property away for nothing. So that was when all the problems started, because then they redesigned Oberry Court College Creek Terrace with inadequate parking. They took away 2 big fields where the kids would play ball and whatever from, and no green space. And all the recreational, they had a huge recreation for the toddlers to play on. And the big field in the basketball court was where the older kids could go and play. And there was places that people didn't have to be on the street. So when you start taking away the programs, you start taking away for people the things for the kids to do. You got kids playing baseball in the street. Last year we had 5 kids got bumped by cars, hit by cars over on the Clay Street area. They throwing balls, you hit a ball, hit your car, and you go to the door, and you see a bunch of kids playing. You can't even say, get the hell over the big field with that ball. There's no big field to go.
So that's what you're talking about with the gentrification, is just the shrinking down of the actual space. And that's where you see the crime kind of blowing up.
Well, what happens is when you take programs out of the community, you take jobs out of the community. When I grew up in Clay Street, barbershops, beauty salons, hotels, restaurants, sub shops. It was a community within a community, corner stores. And it was all black businesses owned by blacks, run by blacks, thriving by blacks.
There's not many black businesses in town now.
They killed them all. They killed them all, and it wasn't by accident. You don't just go into a thriving community and tell people that we're going to tear down these old houses and put up affordable housing that you can afford to move back into. No, let me get it right. Put up housing and you will have the first option to move back into. But you give me anywhere from $12,000 to $20,000. You know I'm already in debt. So how long I'm going to hold on to $20,000 for 2 years while you rebuild some houses? And then when you rebuild them, you come and tell me, well, you got the first option to move in to $400,000 homes, $300,000 homes. City Gate Lane used to be called Larkin Street. It was all black. From the top of Shaw all the way down, Shaw Street to where City Gate Lane is, all of that was all black. You come in with the urban removal and you come back, but people can't afford to come back. So you'd have pushed us all out into Bywaters, Roddenwood, Newtown 20, all these one-way in, one-way out communities with nothing in them, nothing to do.
That played a big part in the election, too.
Yeah. Well, they know they're doing it. Right now, they just ready to take a polling spot from Alderman Kirby's ward. They want to shut down Mount Moriah Church.
The one that's on the corner
right
of Forest Hill and
Bay Ridge. They want to take that pole away from him. But now you got kids who ain't got no money, They're forced to look at one way to make money, and that's sell drugs.
I get what you're saying about shrinking down of this space, and also when you have more densely packed people, you're just going to have more crime and less opportunities. What about the argument that I heard from the residents on Monday night when I watched the council? They're saying that a lot of the problems are coming from outside of the public housing, that the people who are causing.
True.
So that just brings me, I was thinking about, and this is where I looked back a couple of years ago where you had that list of banned visitors, people who couldn't. And that was confusing for me as an outsider looking in, because I heard the people there saying, hey, it's not the people who live here, it's not the issue. People have come from outside. So they said, okay, then we're going to ban the people who are causing the issues. And then you heard certain leaders were saying, no, you can't do that either.
But that's not what they did. They took the banning list and misused it.
When you say they?
The police.
Okay.
The police. Housing Authority had a woman there working by a name. She was a real witch. I mean, she would use her keys to go in people's house and go through people's house when it wasn't there. Didn't tell the police what she saw, whatever. But they would use, like they tried to do me one time, heart love, because I was active in the communities and everything, and they didn't want me in. He came to me and said, here. I said, what's this? He said, it's a banning list. You're not allowed to be in the community.
So you were on that list?
Yeah. He tried to put me on that list. But I said, what am I being banned for? You don't live in the community. I said, okay, what am I being banned for? You don't live in. I said, well, my niece lives right there. You go knock on her door while I stand over here. She'll tell you who I'm visiting. So now I'm visiting somebody in the community. I said, so what am I being banned for, though? He never could give me an answer, and I never took the letter. Now, a lot of people get afraid, won't speak up. It's the police. They're afraid because you're hanging out, you will ban me. And I'm not against the banning list. I was against the way they used it. Mm-hmm. Now, here's my thing is, if you want to ban somebody or they don't belong to the community, here's a simple rule, and I've told every director, here's how you do this. I'm speaking now as a ex-professional street dealer, street hustler.
So you're coming from the other way.
Yeah. If you take and put a bunch of police over Harbor House, you run them down to Newtown 20 and Bywater.
So they're just moving.
Yeah. But here's where the trouble comes in, man. Now you got these outsiders. They moved a lot of people. They did a lot of shady stuff with the Housing Authority list of people to move in, because they didn't want people who knew what was going on in the city, how the city was operating. So they started bringing people from D.C., Baltimore, and they were getting on the list way ahead of people that had been on the list that lived in Annapolis for years. So when you start moving these people to this community, because you're running from that community, you got these out-of-towners who want to claim territory. See, when I was selling drugs, whoever had the goodest drug could sell it anywhere. It wasn't no territory. Basically, everybody in Annapolis related. You know what I'm saying? Especially in the black community, because the heart of the black community came out of the 4th Ward or Camp Parole. So now you got these new guys coming in from Baltimore and D.C. and everything with this gang mentality. And this out in the area, you can't sell drugs here, which now is filtered down to these younger boys who get thrilled on these rappers and all of this bull that they selling. So when you now coming from Eastport Terrace, because police is set up over there, you down riding with a Newtown 20, all of a sudden people claim this is our territory, you can't sell drugs here, or you can't come in and tell our people that we can't sell on that corner. This is what the out-of-towners do. They come into your community and try to take over the community.
So there's a drug dealer gentrification.
So are you saying that drug dealers out of Baltimore and D.C. are coming down in here and claiming their turf?
Yeah.
So when the cops are set up in one community.
So the outsiders coming into this community is not necessarily the rich white kid from Severna Park down here looking to get some drugs.
Oh, well, I mean, they come to buy, but they're not the problem. Far as the violence, they're not the problem. The customer's not the problem. It's the drug dealer's the problem. And I'm not saying every one of them's from out of town. Don't get me wrong, because you got guys that's involved too. But here's what I've been trying to tell them:
the police,
for the police, for the few communities that we got, instead of putting everybody over Harbor House, why don't you blanket all the communities at once?
I think this is what we wanted to get to.
Yeah.
Is from your perspective, from the inside looking out, let's say, because let's be honest, is that if you look at the 3 communities in town, white, black, Latino, every one of the group think that the other group is monolithic, that all the white people are thinking the same thing, want the same thing, all Latinos, etc. And I'm discovering it's not that way.
No.
It's so. From you looking out, saying if you were in charge of the cops for the day, if you were in charge of the police force, how would you allocate the resources to take care of some of the problems that are happening in public housing?
First of all, if you want to get right up cute, the housing authority and I think they've done this wrong. I got to look a little more because I didn't hear much about this. But they just put out $500,000 to hire some security for Newtown Drive, and I think somebody said Robinwood. Well, I don't know if they did it correctly, but stop and think.
Security, outside security.
Stop and think. If you took that same $500,000, put it in with the police department.
Is exactly what I said earlier.
Put it in with the police department and say, now you can put the same police on the same shift in the same community every day in all the communities.
That's right.
Now, that police is going to learn two things if you don't learn nothing else: who the players are and who the guy who's standing on the corner.
Who belongs, who doesn't, who comes, who goes.
Because see,
Who should be in school?
Here's what happens every time the police will come around when the drug dealers are. You got 10 people standing on the corner. The police walks up, 4 of them going to start walking away. You know what I mean? You ain't got to chase them, but they're going to start walking away. They're going to start walking. And pretty soon, you the same police working the same block, the same neighborhood. You're going to say, well, damn, he's out here 7 o'clock shift. He's out here on a 3 o'clock shift. On the 11 o'clock shift, I still see him before he goes in. That tells you something right there.
Because our argument, we were talking about this last week, our city's not big.
No.
Everyone knows, and the areas, the problem areas are not big.
And here's something else. When they hired the new deputy,
Chief Prestoop?
no, when they hired the new, over the housing authority, the new...
Melvin Culver?
No, Michael Brown, who's in charge of security, of the public housing security. And he wanted to start they had their own police force, the housing authority,
right.
Their own police force like they do in the other cities. Sheila Finlacy, for some reason, when I said, well, I lived in Boston, me and Alderman Kirby lived in Boston, same time. Now, they had their own police forces, right?
For public housing.
For public housing, which did a good job. Alderman Kirby, he don't like for me to tell everybody this. He worked at a place called on Blue Hill Ave, Mission Hills. Over on Blue Hill Ave was a high crime area. He went in and made a deal with the drug dealers, similar to what I was telling you how I did. They went all the way down to the back of this place, all the way to the bottom. And he said, if y'all go down there, we won't complain.
Out of sight, out of mind.
They went down there. I don't know how the police got onto it, but they didn't harass them that much either. But what happened was a neighborhood that was gun-ridden, shots, people scared, put their children outside. Now be able to start putting their children outside, start setting out front.
So that's what you were talking about before, is that it was all, you had areas that were designated
This
for
is
certain
in Annapolis, yeah, but I'm talking about
but that's what happened in Boston. Right?
Yeah. And it made it easier for the housing authority police to do their job, because their job was keeping those little kids in the playground and all of that safe. If they didn't go way down there in the middle, back of nowhere, messing with them guys, it was out of the community. It was out of, not saying that it was right, but it was the first step to bringing slackness of crime, bringing people back to some type of life.
Well, it is. You take a bad element out of it, if you will, and then you deal with the playground fights and somebody breaking into a house or something like that. You take a huge element of that out. I mean, there's some sense to that.
What about the programs we were talking about before? Because I get impatient with feel-good programs that don't do a whole lot. Are there programs that the city offers that you'd shake your head and go, there's no point to that?
What program they offer?
Let's say, for example, they're talking about this basketball program that gets all the fathers in Annapolis. They said they used to use
the Summer League?
Now it's Alderman Pendell Charles is.
Oh, the thing she's talking about. I don't know much about that, I'll be honest. I've heard what she said about it, and it sounds like a wonderful idea, but I haven't looked much into it. I'm not a big sports guy. I mean, I go over to the Summer Basketball League over in Y. But this thing that Alderman Pendell Charles was talking about, I don't know much about it more than what she was saying, so I don't know how it was functioning, but I'm quite sure if she said it, she's the one you can believe her word. You could take her word on something.
Yeah, to me, because you said before, it's when the programs start disappearing. And that's where, if I said, okay, if you design, so we just talked to your police chief for the day, you've already allocated your resources. All right, so now you're in charge of programs. For what programs do you implement?
First, I would put back, when I was growing up, the police department had a boys club.
Like a PAL league.
Yeah, they had a boys club. Officer Emery and Sidney Diggs, Charles Hicks, and Bill Williams, and some other police, they were all involved. And they got us children in the neighborhoods involved. Community policing is a need. Not riding through in your car, but getting out, walking through the areas that you're paid to walk. I don't care how dangerous it might be. You're paid. That's what you're paid for. That's why I think police, firemen, and school teachers should get top pay, because they do jobs that
It's
call
ground level.
above and beyond. Yeah, But if you got them doing that, and you got them doing that on a regular, it leads back to they know who the players are. The players, not the guys from out of town, not going to come because the heat going to be down.
So you think a big problem is the divide between the police officers and the community, that there's not a connection?
Well, they're bringing all these Baltimore police down here, and they're treating Annapolis people like they do Baltimore people. Talk to them any kind of way, slam them on the grounds, make them get on the ground. Annapolis people are used to police.
We're a small town.
Yeah, Harrington, Beams, Hicks, all those guys, they knew I was a drug dealer.
Were they local guys?
Yeah, these local police, they knew I was drug dealing. But if I didn't put myself in a situation of disrespecting them or where they had to do their job, then if I came by and I said hello and I said hello, I kept walking. If I wasn't standing on the corner like I was trying to sound them with her, then hey.
It reminds me of that cartoon with the sheepdog and the wolf.
Yeah, they make you pack every now and then. And so they would try to come down and knock us off on the water or something every now and then. But what the hell, you going to come down the water and get powder cocaine or something from somebody? Right. You know what they're going to do with it. Right in the water. Right. And there a couple of times they tried to knock us off going to those spots. But they never figured it out. We was using boats, bring it down. We'd put it in somebody's rowboat, and they'd be out there fishing all morning long, and we paid them to be out there early in the morning like they was fishing. So when we came down and they came in, it didn't look like they were coming to give us anything, you know?
That's awesome.
I mean...
You're putting some work into it, let's be honest.
If you're going to hustle, you got to do it right if you ain't trying to go to prison.
You got to be on your game.
Yeah, if you ain't trying to go to prison.
So the social programs that you were talking about that all disappeared.
Okay, you had in the communities, you had the parents that would watch the little kids, the daycare. Mm-hmm. They took out a full-fledged daycare out of College Creek Terrace over at Court. I mean, a huge daycare center. They took it out and they didn't replace it. There's Stanton School with its after-school program does a wonderful job. But Housing Authority used to offer, when people were coming in, they had parenting skills as far as how to live in the house, how to maintain an apartment. They had job programs which would allow parents to get their child babysit while they go out and work.
So these are all
find
gone
a
now.
job. They all gone. While they go out and find a job, while you go out and find a job.
The Boys and Girls Club is down to one club now, too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they got that one over there up Bywater.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. They're just drawing everything out of the communities. If I was a police officer, if I was chief pursuit, first of all of my police would go through learning how to talk to people with respect. Mm-hmm. All of my police officers would be assigned to designated areas in the communities. I'd have the same police in the same community each shift. Get to learn the community. Get to learn the people.
That works for every community. Yeah. That's not just public housing.
But I'm just saying how I would, and you're right, it does. That was the one thing I would do. It would be mandatory that I'd have at least one police live in the community. It would be mandatory that at least one police live in the community. When I was coming up, Bill Williams, Sidney Diggs lived in the community. And so they knew the players from an outside, from perspective. And so that would be one of the things I would have. Housing Authority used to have, like I was about to say, when a young person come and get an apartment, make sure they had a program to teach them how to take care of the housing. Teach them how to take that, this is your castle, this is your home. I would never forget when my mother was moving out and that man came and inspected my mother's house. He said to her, Miss McFarland, whenever you want a place back in public housing, you got it. There we found nothing wrong with your apartment. But my mother, she was then, and she's 90 years old, and she still is this neat freak. I mean, she's very, like you got these papers right there right now, she would literally lean over and straighten them out. Yeah. And so that's very important because you got more young kids getting these public housing apartments who don't know how to take care of them. There's no programs now.
There's no life skills.
Yeah, to teach you how to just go out and get trained for a job. Everybody's not a rocket scientist. There's no mediocre job training. There's none. I mean, if it was up to me and I was still running housing authority and out there, I would sit back and I'd say, wow, black folk used to, in the 60s and up to the mid-70s, 3 or 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening, you seen black folk come home, getting dropped off by the white ladies who they'd been cleaning their house all day. Well, why wouldn't you say, okay, we know this is what you know how to do, but we're going to teach you how to turn this into a company. You can put on a uniform and now you can demand proper pay. Look at the Hispanics came over and they learned how to do it.
They're killing it.
Yeah. And so why can't we take and teach the programs that teach people how to do mediocre skilled jobs that they already knew how to do, but they stopped doing them because you weren't getting paid any money for them. So if you tell me now, go and get bonded, go in and do what I need, and now I got a business saying I can clean houses, I'm bonded if something happens or whatever, and teach them how to get a uniform and fill out paperwork, and boom. Now here's people that now you teach them to get a living. The next step is to turn them over to the programs and move them out of public housing.
So that's what you're talking about before, that what your mom was saying, that it's transitional.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And you're saying that it's not transitional now because you don't have these programs. People don't know how to get out.
Right.
It's not even on the
I lived in public housing from 1997 to 2002 is when I moved out. I seen what my mother did, follow suit.
And you always saw it as temporary.
Yeah. I'm 8 out of 9 kids. Most of my sisters and brothers did pretty good. And one of my older brothers told me, he said, you ain't gonna be nothing but a failure. Because he had his shit together, he really did. And he really does to this day. He owns 3 houses, he has a business, he retired. He's a GS-14 from the Naval Academy, working for the federal government. And he used to try to pull me along. But I was being called by the streets. So he said to me one time, you're going to end up being shit. You ain't going to be nothing. From that point on was when I first said, okay, I'm going to get a house. I went and got into public housing, and I worked on until I got my home that I'm living in now. Water been up right here. Hadn't been here yet, but I'm holding on.
Yeah, ain't nothing like a good motivator when someone tells you can't.
Well, it's also a big brother's job. I'm a big brother, and it's my job to knock my little brother down.
So I mean, I knew from right then and there that my mother didn't. Motto in our house coming up was failure is not an option. That's what all my grandmother used to look at us and say. She worked at the Naval Academy for 40 years. When she retired, she had 2 years of sick leave and a whole year annual leave. You can't even do this now. She stayed home 3 years getting paid before she actually retired. And her always these things used to be, son, failure's not an option around here. You're going to be something. I don't care if you're a carpenter, you're going to be something. I don't care if you're a dishwasher, you're going to be something. And that was always her thing. So I guess sometimes things that's given to you when you're young come back to you. Oh, is it 2:45?
Yep.
I got to get ready to boogie a few.
Well, we're out of time anyway.
I guess you got some more questions I didn't answer. I'll talk.
Actually, you went through all of them, and you actually gave us a great understanding because, again, looking from the outside in, you think you know all the solutions. And it's talking to someone who's lived it and can tell us what's happening. And I think you confirmed a lot of what we were kind of thinking about. But, I mean, we love watching you on City Council, so keep doing that.
Oh, I'm not going to quit, man. See, I'm at the point right now, I feel as though I spent so many years messing up my community that I got an obligation. That's why I chose to buy my house back on Pleasant Street. That's why I chose to get that house back on Pleasant Street. That's why I choose to live there. That's why I choose to raise my children there, because who am I to say now if I done screwed up something, it ain't good enough for me and my children.
Yeah.
And I was a main part, even though it's changed so much with these young kids, they have no respect for nobody or nothing.
Where do you think that problem lies? Is that the parents that are...
Well, it comes from parents who saying, oh, I ain't gonna let my child go through what I went through. See, when I was coming up, the lady down the street could smack you upside your head.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I was growing up, I was much more afraid of my,
And
my neighbors.
you wasn't going to go home and tell because your mother wasn't going to run down the street after her. She knew that you done something. So you was going to get it again before she even went to see you. So that drew a line of respect, you see. But now you have these mothers, if somebody say something to their child, they go down there like the child's right. And so now everybody's scared to say something to these younger kids, so they do more and more. When you kill the morals and the values, or when you take a community like Clay Street, you're not originally from here, right?
Montgomery County.
Montgomery County. But within the Fourth Ward, it was a city within a city. And there was values, principles, education was pushed, working was pushed, respect was pushed. I mean, if you called a girl a bitch, when I was coming along, they used to carry, you know, the church kids, the old Ken, they used to carry them because you couldn't get locked up for carrying them, but they'd cut the hell out you. Or they'd go get their girlfriends and they'd come back and jump you. They'd beat the hell out of you. But with this garbage rap music, they answer to, hey, bitch, or you a hoe, or it anticipates on to the young kids that the only way you're going to get a large number of money is to be a drug dealer. That you got to have it right away.
It's all instant.
Yeah, and instead of saying, okay, work, go to school, get it the way.
Which, by the way, isn't an attitude that's limited to public housing kids. You know, that's
But I'm saying it all comes up out of that music, in my opinion. And it's because y'all can attest to this. The music of your time period kind of had the way you dressed and the kind of way you acted was to the music you was listening to. You know? And so if you miss listening to this, oh my God, all it is a cuss word every hour. I never allowed to play it in my house. I didn't like when it was original rap, yeah, then when it came this gangster rap stuff, out the door it went. When it was Sugar Hill Gang and Run DMC boys, Fat Boys, they weren't talking violence. They was, just having a little fun. But then it came with this gangster rap stuff when it started, just killed everything, And in my opinion, if overall, the first thing the police would do is when they start a blanket all the communities, get that going, and then you could start implementing what the parents think is needed in their community.
Right.
We better let this lady in here.
Hi, Mr. Eades.
Plus, I got to get up there.
Thank you for coming out. We really appreciate it all.
Enough.
No, you did, man. Thank you. I appreciate it, man.
All right.
Well, there you have it. Robert Eades.
That was Robert.
Live from recorded live in the Annapolis Library on West Street.
I like him. I really do like him a lot. He was larger than life when you see him on TV. When you see him in front of City Council, he and Mayor Panelides going toe to toe, and it's just he was not what I expected. Yeah,
or in front of your car as you cut him off on the way to Grouse.
He did cut me off. I was actually being nice. I said it wasn't my fault. He did cut me off, but he was a sweetheart about it. And I had an aggressive drive.
He really was. It was there were some things that really surprised me. I don't know whether surprised me, but I reassured me there is when. In the episode last week, we were talking about, I felt that community policing was a big thing and a real good solution to some of the crime citywide. And I said, why don't we have the same cop, driving my neighborhood? Maybe he's biking one day. Maybe he's walking one day. So,
yeah, and he agreed. I mean, that was, matter of fact, he came that, I think he's right, for the same reason. So the two white guys score one for us. You were actually right about that for a second. He did that. I mean, and... there's a couple things that really... That changed my mind. Like I think I said in last week's episode where I was talking about the social programs, and not social programs, but the feel good programs. And I don't have a whole lot of. To me, it's a way to spend grant money, and it doesn't actually make a difference. I found out, he says that's what changed everything is when they stopped those programs. And I thought about that. If you live in public housing for your entire life, you don't know how to take care of a house. You don't know how to dress and get ready for an interview. These are all things that we take for granted, but there's no starting point for a lot of people. And those programs, I guess, I never thought about it that way. He's right. And we talked about how public housing has changed as a community, because I've never seen it as a community. I thought when I was watching the riots in Baltimore last year, it was interesting to me because when I heard people saying, why are the blacks in those communities burning down their own communities and tearing down? And someone had a good point saying they don't, it's not their own communities. They happen to live there, but they don't own anything there. There's no sense of ownership or responsibility.
There's no real skin in the game.
I guess, I never thought about that either with the public housing, but he said, it was a community at one time. And he agrees with what a lot of conservatives say, that his mother taught him about that it's a stepping stone. And I guess that's probably an old school view that not only conservatives have, but you have the people who were even in public housing back in the 60s and 70s, so.
Well, you look at the comment that he made about his mother when she moved out, and she, the inspector said, hey, ma'am, if you ever want to come back to public housing, you just come on back because there's not a damn thing wrong with this apartment.
And he lived there for 5 years, and he said that he saw that as a stepping stone out, and now he's got home ownership, with some help from some people that ultimately he banged heads with. But I really did. It's really interesting to me when you think that the same things that we lament, where the changes in society. He's saying the same things. The kids aren't respectful anymore, which, by the way, I don't completely agree with him. I think every generation says that about the other kids.
Right.
But I think...
I also hate the rap music, too. Today's rap music.
Well, today's I don't. I'm kind of old school. I like, well,
like you said, Grandmaster Flash. And
a little after that.
But it's...
But it's interesting when you talk about, when you shrink down anything, whether it be a fish tank, and this is where I'm making comparisons to human beings, but when you shrink anything down into a smaller area, you're going to have more problems within that group, within that population.
True.
And when he talks about there is nowhere for the kids to go and recreate, so they're right up against the drug dealers, and you're not going to get rid of the drug dealers. You just don't, because they're going to pop up at other places.
No. And if you're looking for them, as we found out, they're down at the bottom of the hill, right next to the water. And if they don't have any drugs on them, look for a rowboat out.
We're laughing with him about him dealing drugs. We look at drug dealers as these guys who are just dirtballs. We're laughing and we're actually rooting for them. It's like Breaking Bad, where you're rooting for the bad guy.
Oh my God, it's great. The cops would come down and they wouldn't even know that they're out there rowing the boat and everything else. So it's...
But it's great hearing from... All right, so we've covered the two white guys who were looking in from the newspapers and from what they perceive as the problem. Right. We got the guy from within public housing who's telling us how it really is.
Right. And next week, we're going to look at somebody that lives on the fringe of public housing. We've got a woman who's trying to raise a family just on the outskirts, literally across the street from public housing in Eastport. She's hearing gunshots all the time. She's seeing what's going down. And interesting part is that she's not one of these keep the public housing over there. She just really wants to integrate them into the community.
And not many are, actually, much to my surprise. There is a lot of that talk about, they watch with interest. I don't know if it's a president or the public housing Harbor House. They have elected officials within there. And it's funny that you have the middle-class white people who live on the fringes have a great interest on who's being elected. And there is some communication back and forth, which is
very encouraging, very good. But... yeah, and then, of course, we've got a plot twist that came in about an hour and a half ago that HACA, for some unknown reason at this point, fired their director of security that was just hired in May.
And as with everything else, it's mysterious, and no one knows why, and no one knows how. But
the chairman,
matter of fact, he's saying he's been fired. I don't think there's any word from HACA themselves.
Right, the chairman of HACA says, I didn't know anything about that. And so it's kind of a crazy thing. He said that he was told that they were going in a different direction, and hopefully that direction is not without security.
And then, speaking of security, the other night, right after we talked to Robert, which was 2 days ago, so I've been Tuesday or Wednesday. But that was that later that night. They announced, HACA announced that they were no longer going to have security at Newtown 20, which
they hired him for 7 days, and
then mysteriously they're gone again.
So this is there's something going on there. We just got to figure out. Somebody's got to figure out what it is.
And we got to point out, as has been pointed out to us, Jared, that we are conspiracy guys, and we are conspiracy guys. But that doesn't mean that there aren't conspiracies sometimes.
That's true.
At least a blatant lack of communications.
That's true. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go talk to somebody from Eastport that lives right across from public housing. And we're going to be back next week with another episode.
In the meantime, go visit us at themarylandcrabs.com and find us on Twitter at MDCrabsPodcast on Twitter. And the Maryland Crabs, we have a Facebook page, and we also have a Facebook group.
Right, you can also look for that on SoundCloud. And if you want to email us,
info at
themarylandcrabs.com.
That's it.
And we'll promptly ignore that as well.
One else has got to check that.
Yeah, I do.
I don't have that set up on my phone.
I've got it on my phone only.
I don't even check my regular email.
But, get on, download us. I mean, if you're just listening to this, subscribe. Get onto iTunes, give us a rating. That would be a 5-star. 5 thumbs.
And if you can give us comments, that's the way that the algorithms work. It gets us out in front of more people. And again, I'm really blown away at how many people downloaded the first 2 episodes. As a matter of fact, we saw the second episode was through the roof. We had as many downloads in the first 2 hours as the first episode. Then everyone went back and listened to the first one.
Right.
So, and yes, we're not journalists, so we are, as people point out, we're only working with the information that we have. So, if it's something
and what we think, and it's opinion, commentary. We're going to start a conversation.
We'll come back and correct it. But
we're going to start and anytime you're on any kind of social media or anything like that, and you see a little share button,
sure,
hit it.
Show the hell out of it.
Do it twice.
So, okay, so we're done with this. We're done with Mr. Eades, and we're moving on to the next episode, which will be out next week.
Absolutely. Have a good week.
Goodbye.
This has been the Maryland Crabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them in all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.